So let's talk about incentives and compensation. So why would an agent want to work with you, and how can they be compensated? And really, what can you do from your perspective to really win them over, right? You're trying to sell them on working with you. And so let's talk about the incentives and just understanding the general dynamic of working with a traditional buyer versus working with an investor, and what some of those experiences might be, and where they might be coming from. So consider that you're not the first investor or someone that's trying to work with them on this type of a deal, and they might have some preconceived notions. And understanding that they could have been burned on a deal before, they could have gotten into escrow before and had someone promise them the moon, and all of a sudden in their inspection period, I've seen companies make fake repair bids. Literally, there's software out there, I don't know if you know this, but there's software that creates fake repair bids. I can't believe how unethical that is, just so that investors can tie up deals at the top of the competitive bidding war that they might be in order to get this deal. And then once they have the seller and the agent in escrow and they say, oh, we only need 3 days or 7 days for our inspection period, which is usually completely BS, and then they come up with all of these excuses and reasons why their initial offer price didn't end up actually being able to work out. And most of the time, investors, I'm not saying every investor is like this and every time there's a reduction that's what's happening, but some of the times, and maybe most of the time, investors are going into these deals and they know that they're not going to be acquiring the property at that price, and they're deliberately trying to just get reductions. If you ask me, that's a pretty shitty way of doing business. And so, understanding that real estate agents might be experiencing that over and over and over again. And so, when we approach the conversation by saying, we're a real estate investment company or a firm or an individual or whatever, perspective that you have with your intent to acquire properties for, flipping or for wholesaling or for buying and holding, whatever your approach is, they might have this preconceived notion that you're just going to be just like everyone else, right? So understanding that, you need to have at your hip, you being ready to go, to take down those belief systems that they have, and explain to them how you're going to be different and how you will be the exception to the rule that they've already experienced. And so really trying to allay their fears and letting them know that you're not going to treat them that way. And then with integrity, obviously not doing that and staying true to your word is really important. And so when you do that, then the real estate agent will be your best fan, your number one raving fan. And they're going to want to work with you because the last thing they're going to want to do is take their property to the market and have 10 of those, crazy experiences where their house is falling out of escrow a bunch of times, when you've taken the experience to a whole nother level and they know what's possible with you because you do what you say you're going to do. You only write offers that you can perform on. You only work with agents who understand where you're coming from and that your goals are aligned, right? And so there's all of these different ways that you can position yourself and position your offer and letting them know why you do need inspection periods. For instance, I would suggest if you think you need to inspect a property before you write an offer on it, go out to the property and do that, and then write your offer non-contingent. So your offer can be much more strong when you go into the deal with the seller sitting at the dining room table and looking at a bunch of different offers, and yours is the only one that has your contingencies removed. And we can talk a little bit more about this in another video where we can talk about positioning and strengthening your position as a buyer against others. But that's something that you might want to consider when, what is the incentive for a real estate agent to work with you over anyone else, right? And especially bringing you an off-market deal. Well, all of it comes down to the transparency, the integrity, the effectiveness of working with you, obviously you still need to make a fair market offer and, do show them that they're getting a good deal working with you. This isn't just to steal properties from people and, get the best deal in the world, right? Like that's not the end objective. The end objective is to have a win-win-win scenario for the seller, for the agent, and for you. And when you can do that, you guys will save a ton of time because they don't want to have to take the house to the market. That's a really long and arduous process. So that's a few incentives to kind of, give you an understanding of why an agent might want to work with you, and for you to start thinking about, what are some of the things that I bring as a unique value, and why is my experience, my business, how we do business, how are we world class? What am I proud of? Ask yourself this question and really go into it and think, what are we really good at customer support? Are we, do we get out to the house the same day within a few hours? Like, what are some of the things that that you are world class at, that you do the best in the world at, and that no one else in your industry does, and that someone who actually wants to feel cared about might actually really, really appreciate. And so you would be surprised at how little the competition cares about the detail. And that's really, in my opinion, where you can stand out and where you can make the world of a difference to a real estate agent or a broker who is trying to build a career and really they want to build their own pipeline, and understanding how they can just feed deals to someone who will buy them if they're at the right price. And so that's how you can establish that type of dynamic. So let's talk about compensation. So agents and brokers get paid when deals close, like bottom line. And so considering that, a real estate agent or a broker will be taking a percentage of the sale price, right? In California, standard is around 5% for both sides combined. So 2.5% for the listing side representing the seller, and 2.5% representing the selling side as the buyer. And so understanding that if you're trying to approach this relationship and the dynamic of wanting to get exclusive opportunities that are off market, you need to think about how you can make it the easiest and also the most exciting for this agent to work with you. So first thing, obviously they're going to be representing the seller. That's a no-brainer. They know that. And if any agent knows the game of working with an investor, they will be very familiar with what we call dual representation and double ending the deal. Now, sometimes real estate agents won't do that because they feel, and they've agreed with their sellers, and sometimes the sellers really spearhead them not getting a double end deal because it might not feel aligned with the seller's best intentions of getting the highest priced property or highest price for the sale of their property. And so that's understandable. Totally understand that. Totally get that, right? If you were a seller, you'd want the most. And if you only brought one buyer to the table and you're like, here's the buyer and I'm also getting paid for representing them, it's like, how much did you really market my property, right? So thinking about that for a quick second, understanding that there's two kind of dynamics I want to discuss here. So first thing, if you work with an agent and you work with an agent on a property that's on the market, and you work on that property with that agent and you are offering on that property and you are one of the highest offers, or if not the highest, and then you actually buy the deal, they have now the experience of you of acquiring a property with them that was the highest and best offer, and they had a smooth experience in everything that you bring to the table, right? So they get the full experience of you on the open market. That is where the confidence in the agent, while they're talking about you, now they have an experience share, which is extremely important, of working with you on the open market and all the hassle that agent worked with the sellers on dealing with, a dozen offers and all the walkthroughs and all the things that, a seller might not want to experience. And so, when they do take your offer on that off-market deal to this new property, and they're working with this new seller, and they bring that offer to the table and saying like, no, these are the people that, you know, already I've worked with before and they beat the market. So like, this is just going to be easier and the best offer for you. That's how you can kind of position yourself. And remember, this is a long game, right? So this isn't just like the first deal every single time and it's always going to be that way. So just consider that this is a long-term game, and there might be a couple of other parties involved, but the general flavor of who you are is the experience of how you operate. And just remember that when every conversation, every deal that you do, that is being carried over into the next experience. Okay, so let's just assume that the real estate agent can represent you, and they're wanting to represent you on the RElist. So the RElist is really important for you, obviously, and to make sure that your property gets sold for as much as it can get sold for, assuming that you're flipping this property. And so you need to think about and build into your pro forma, into your analysis of the acquisition, how much you can afford, or really to figure out how much you can pay this agent as much as you can to incentivize them, right? So the more you can pay to incentivize that agent over someone else, if you can afford to pay them 3% on the RElist and someone else is only saying that they can afford to pay 2%, they're gonna feel financially swayed if they're representing both of you on the purchase the same way. So they're getting 5% up front either way, 1% extra on the back, and they're gonna probably go with the person who can pay them more. So I always recommend to build into your pro forma a really healthy amount so that you can offer that. And then if there's any perspective of like, hey, there's other parties involved, I would suggest obviously running your numbers, and if the margins obviously have to make sense, but like pay the agents as well as you can. And that's really going to help them, understand that they can make as much money as honestly that's possible working with you. And so, if you consider, 5% up front, another 2% on the back, another making 7% per deal, and then you can offer to let these agents work with you before you take your renovated project to the market and give them the opportunity to pre-market your property. Now all of a sudden they're working with another 2.5%, so 9.5% on the back, like total. Like these agents are going to be ecstatic working with you. So if you can really, create the narrative, right? Just imagine a long line and a narrative of their experience with you starting right now and then where you will be. And that is as beautiful of a narrative as you can create, and as exciting and profitable as you can create for the agent. They're going to start associating so much potential with working with you, and they're going to be like, I'm going to go find a bunch of other deals for you because this sounds amazing, right? So you want to create a bunch of these, what one of my friends calls patriots. You want to create a bunch of patriots for your initiative. And you don't want just a bunch of mercenaries who are just one deal and then they're gone, or like they're just trying to sell this one house and then they just hate what they're doing. It's like you don't want to work with a bunch of those people. You want a bunch of people who are aligned with your vision and their visions are aligned, and you can all have a win-win scenario. And so that's really what I want you to consider. And so take these points into thought and into practice, and really map it out and like bullet point it out, and understand again what your unique value propositions are as the buyer, and understanding what are you able to bring to the table? Who are you even uniquely as a person? Like who are you? What are some of your qualities and traits? And understanding that all plays into working through this, and like remembering that people want to work with good people is really helpful, and if you're just seen as one of those other investors who are just smiling and dialing and just trying to make another deal, people just generally don't like to work with people that are just like robots. And so build some empathy, understanding the person and discovering what lights them up and what gets them excited, and really talking to the people that you're working with, talking to these agents and brokers and like getting to know them, like making notes on their on your account with them, and like understanding what do they like? Do they have a family? Do they only do real estate deals so they can afford vacations? Like what's their thing, so that you can always tie back in what their why is, because that's what a real incentive is for them. Like, what is moving to them? And it's easy to say that all agents are just financially motivated. Humans are financially motivated, but only to a certain perspective, right? I think there was some study that said like after $76,000 a year, like it's diminishing returns. And so I'm sure there's a lot of people, and maybe even you, or can easily scoff at that, but some scientists had this data that says something like that. So the point is that humans are driven further than just monetarily. And so considering that, understanding, kind of wrapping all this up, that there's a lot of different ways to incentivize and compensate someone that is trying to work with you to achieve the same goal, and really creating the narrative, understanding how to articulate that in a very clear and concise way with confidence and integrity. That will help you immensely. Just that alone, and like understanding that you're coming into this dynamic to give and to set it up for them to succeed, you will go so far in this way of generating leads. It will blow your mind. And so if you're always coming at this with that giving mentality, with setting it up so that everyone can win, you'll go really far. So I hope you understand a little bit better now, and you have developed some awareness around the things that you can bring to the table, and appreciate the value that the agents and the people that you can work with in this space can really, bring you, and the opportunities that you guys can create together exclusively off market, and really make the whole transaction efficient and smooth the way that it really should be, in my opinion. We're really just trying to make the world a better place, and making the process easier for everyone. So let's go ahead and keep moving forward and go ahead and build some amazing relationships. See you soon.